Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Acumen's Webinar Wednesday. My name is Stephen Phelps, and I am the marketing manager here at Acumen. And today we brought in Sage Intacct's solution consultant, Nicole Winfrey, to give you an introduction and demo on Sage Intacct Planning. But before she begins, please note that this webinar is in listen-only mode and should last between 30 to 45 minutes. If you have any questions, then please write them in the chat option, and we will answer them near the end of the presentation. We have plenty to cover, so I will now pass it on to Nicole.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Welcome, everyone. This is our introduction to Sage Intacct Planning. I'm Nicole Winfrey, a principal solution consultant here. Long history with FP&A and budgeting and planning solutions. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today about Sage Intacct Planning. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to introduce Sage Intacct Planning at that higher 30,000 foot level before we actually get into the planning cycle. So for those of you who may be new to Sage Intacct Planning, I want to cover a few core principles of the tool. So we really strive for our customers to have the best planning experience possible through our intuitive design and intelligent tools. And we show this through also when you're deploying the tool and creating a budget from scratch. Having a self-discoverable application that is built for finance and business users really allows for having that best planning experience. So we really want to make it easy to not only use, but also administer the application from the business side. One example of being self-discoverable is the connected symbiotic nature with Sage Intacct. So you can leverage your dimensions, your structure, your data to quickly build a budget within minutes. And you also can enhance that set of data with Excel sourced information, whether it's financial or non-financial data like statistics, to really capture and drive your budget with your key business drivers. So having that connected ability with not only Sage Intacct, but also other sources through our Excel import is key. Also, from a flexibility standpoint, that's another core principle where we never lock you into one single way or method of planning. So, it kind of goes back to some of those planning best practices that we like to talk about where, your planning process should evolve over time as your business grows and changes. And so Sage Intacct Planning really gives you that ability, not only with the intuitive tools and capabilities that are built in, but also things like driver-based modeling, what if scenarios, rolling forecasts that can evolve as you grow as a business. And then, of course, last but not least is collaboration. Really engaging your non-finance users in the planning process and giving them the tools to make collaboration successful will really increase accountability and buy-in across the organization. And we've seen that through a lot of our customer success stories on the collaborative nature, and being able to gather that buy-in and accountability across the organization really does enhance that planning process. One of our core principles around Sage Intacct Planning is really to create a clear vision to guide strategic and informed decisions. So don't think of this just as that annual budgeting tool. This is something we see our customers being used on a regular basis, whether it's weekly or monthly, to really help them make decisions and drive the future of the business going forward. So what I'm going to do is actually talk through how those core Sage Intacct Planning principles support the continuous planning cycle that we see here on the screen. When we take a look at our budgeting and planning cycle, this is really meant to be revisited on a regular basis, not just the annual plan. So having that iterative approach of a continuous planning cycle to be able to create, to model, to analyze, and report throughout the year. A lot can change throughout the year, whether it's a business missions change, customer demands may change, the outside factors can change. I can list off a whole slew of reasons why this process should be revisited often. But being able to shift from more of that reactive mindset to the proactive mindset is really a game changer for a lot of our customers. And this type of agility can be achieved within Sage Intacct Planning. So you may be thinking, if these benefits are really that great, why aren't organizations following this continuous planning cycle? Well, it's really simple, and you may be experiencing this as well. A lot of times their current process is too cumbersome, it's too time consuming, it's too manual. It tends to happen with an Excel. We all know some of those challenges that can happen with an Excel when you have a lot of workbooks or sheets. Sometimes there's just not enough resources to really support this type of cycle within the current planning tool. So if you do fall into that bucket, let's actually talk about how each one of these steps can be achieved within Sage Intacct Planning for a more efficient, a more accurate, and in a more collaborative manner. So as I go through each one of these 4 steps, I'll talk briefly about how it can be achieved in Sage Intacct Planning, and then I'll actually get into the product and demo a portion of this so you can get a flavor of what it looks like in the tool. But let's actually start from the beginning. So the creation of that budget, that initial budget. So within the built-in budget wizard, what we have built in Sage Intacct Planning, it makes it really easy to get a budget up and running fast. The wizard guides you through creating budgets step by step and does that heavy lifting for you, which means you save time and headaches and all those possible Excel headaches that we all know about. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility in your budget structure, and you can even pre-populate your brand new budget with a base set of data for your users as an easy starting point. Sounds great. So why don't we actually do that together? We'll create a budget from scratch right within the tool here. So let me jump out to the planning tool. So I'm already actually logged into the planning tool, and I've selected the menu item, create a new budget. So it gives you an option on whether you want to actually connect to your Sage Intacct environment, which we'll go ahead and do. But you have some other options if you wanted to use other data or Excel files, for example. So let's go ahead and connect to our Sage Intacct, and you basically would sign in here using your existing company ID and your user and name and password. So as we connect to our environment, it's going to walk us through about a 10-step process to be able to create that initial budget from scratch and load in data. So in our first step here, it's going to ask us if you have a multi-entity Sage Intacct environment. You can choose all entities, or if you wanted to be able to come in and only create a budget from a single entity, you can do that as well. But we'll go ahead and choose all entities at this point. Next, you would actually name your budget. So we'll call this specialty products budget. You would choose whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit company, and this will determine the type of labels and the type of labels that are in your reports and so forth within the planning tool. And then also a date range. So we'll go ahead and set this for 1 year, but just keep in mind you can have a multi-year budget, whether you want to do a higher level 5-year strategic plan or maybe just a detailed 1-year budget going forward. This can be changed also at the end as well. So clicking forward to the next step, this is where you would choose which dimensions from Sage Intacct to bring into Sage Intacct Planning. So this would be specific to your environment where you could choose, okay, at my forecasting and budgeting level, I want to be able to bring in department information. I want to bring in a location since we have a multi-entity company. And we also maybe want to leverage our customer dimension as well to be able to budget by. But vendor and item may be a little bit too detailed. So you have that option to include or exclude any of those dimensions that we have within Intacct. So selecting department, location, and customer, we'll go ahead and use those dimensions. And if you have employee records within Intacct, you have the option to bring in those employee records to now have a view of your existing employees, all the salary and wages, information and expenses associated with those employees. And then also after the fact, you can always layer in to be hireds and other employee related expenses as well. If you don't have employee records in Intacct, that's okay too. You can use our Excel import features after the fact and be able to import employee records. But for this demo purpose, we'll go ahead and say, yes, we'll import your employee records. Also from an account merging standpoint. So sometimes our customers want to merge specific accounts into a single budget line to be able to budget and forecast at a higher level than what may be in your Intacct account environment. So for example, if we have our office supplies, phone and internet, and dues and subscriptions, if we only wanted to budget and forecast at that group level, we can create groups on the fly. So we'll call this office expenses. So when we apply that, now that mapping is created. These three accounts will be consolidated into a single budget line. And also when you load actuals in to look at actuals versus budget, you'll be able to see it at that single budget line. Of course, this is optional, but it does give you that option to budget and forecast at a higher level easily. The next in the process of creating your budget is really determining your budget structure. So this is really where that flexibility comes in to play, where as we look at our major account groupings over here on the right-hand side, and we look at the available dimensions that we chose in a previous step, we can now determine what those hierarchies look like within our budget structure. So for example, since we have multiple locations, we may want to look at revenue by location and be able to plan and forecast by location, but we also want to look at revenues by location by customer. So by dragging and dropping that in, you're creating that budget structure and those hierarchies based upon those dimensions that we selected earlier. And these can be different for the major account groupings. So for example, if our operating expenses, we don't look at by customer or by location, but we want to be able to plan by department for our operating expenses, you can go ahead and drag and drop that in as well. So nice flexibility from that standpoint. And of course, this can be modified after the fact once this budget structure is created as well. But we'll go ahead and click next. And one nice part about leveraging the data that's in Sage Intacct to create your budget is you have the option to populate your budget based on actuals or budgets that are within Sage Intacct. So if you think about next year's budget, if you want to be able to say, okay, I want to take last year's actuals with a possible adjustment in there and populate that base budget as a starting point to now roll out to your users to make adjustments to, we have that option within the budget wizard here. So if we want to go ahead and do that, we can choose what set of data within Intacct to bring in to populate your budget. So you may want to choose a specific year. If you're partially way through the year, you can maybe choose year-to-date actuals plus the remainder of the year as a budget that's within Intacct. So in this example, we have year-to-date actuals coming in through November, and now we actually want to choose a budget version to populate for that last month. So maybe we want to use our forecast because that's our most up-to-date information for our projections. So now this will actually take 2021 actuals with that remainder of that month of forecast and populate it in our new budget. And we even have the option to increase or decrease percentage-wise to set year-over-year change. So that information that we just selected from actuals to populate our budget, we now can say, we have an executive directive to increase our revenues by 10% and maybe decrease our operating expenses by 5% at an overall company level. So you can make those changes right here as you're populating that base set of data within the budget tool. And as we select next, it's the last step where this is now creating that budget structure. And we'd be able to see in about 90 seconds or about 2 minutes or so, that full budget structure created as well as that data populated within our budgeting tool. So just in the sense of, in the sense of time, and since we don't have a lot of time together, I will show you what that looks like if I go to another one of our environments here. So we just saw that full budget being created, and now this is what it would look like when the last step is finished. So as you can see over here on the left-hand side, let me go ahead and collapse some of these. We now have that full budget structure by location, and we also have our operational expenses by department and so forth. So this is a full budget structure as well as the data that's populated from Intacct, ready to go, ready to be changed and modified by those users. Cash forecasting, a P&L, a balance sheet, your revenue plan, your headcount, and ready to have models being layered in there to actually drive your budget. So you have full visibility into that working budget that we just created within a couple minutes using our budget wizard. But now that we've actually seen that information being created through our budget wizard, we've set that initial step within the continuous planning cycle ready to go. So just within a couple minutes, we're able to create that budget from scratch. But you may be thinking, does this really help? And so let's actually review just a few customer testimonials and quotes that found real time savings in the creation of the budget, and also the ability to sync with it intact. So I'm not going to read through these one by one, but you can see, 60% of budget preparation workload was eliminated, reducing a budget creation time by 50%, going from hours, not weeks, and also having the ability to sync with the dimensions in Intacct accounting is a real game changer. So we see a lot of great customer stories as well as time savings within even that initial budget creation setting. So now that we've created the budget, let's talk about that second step within the process of the continuous planning cycle. So I have to confess, models are actually my favorite part of our planning tool that we have. So I really believe in creating a driver-based plan with key business drivers as the heart of it. And models are a perfect place to do this. So whether it's financial or non-financial data like statistics, being able to capture these and put the calculation power in the hands that know the business the best, not necessarily an IT coder, is a really huge benefit to be able to drive that accountability and buy-in from the organization. So developing Sage Intacct planning models for driver-based budgets really gives the power to organizations to understand the impact of dynamic variables that change within the evolving business. So this could include, revenue drivers, operating expenses, workforce planning, even mergers and acquisitions, adding expansions onto a facility. Those type of situations can be modeled out within Sage Intacct Planning. So if you think about it, if you have your models and your plans driven off these key factors, to see the impact of a change with a few clicks of a button right within the tool, you can see the impact on the financial statements immediately. So you can really test out changes to those critical business factors right even during a meeting with the executive team. What if they say, we want to go ahead and increase our plan pricing per month because we're a subscription-based company? What would that actually look like? You can do that right in real time and be able to see that impact immediately on the consolidated income statement and balance sheet and cash flow. So, let's actually take a look at how that would look within the tool. So let me pop back over to our application, and I'm going to change over to an example for a medical facility. So obviously this can be across every single industry. I'm just going to give an example of one for a possible medical facility situation. So let's take an example of, since we're housing long-term patients within our medical facility here. We have a couple different units and locations that we're modeling out. And within our modeling feature, we've created a model around what is going to be our public insurance revenue for this particular facility. So within our models, we have some key assumptions that we have captured within our model around occupancy rate. So we have a 75% occupancy rate at our facilities. We also have a driver based on room allocation rates from a percentage standpoint. We also have multiple locations where we're capturing the total number of units that we're actually housing. So in our first facility, we have 37 rooms that we can house our long-term patients in. And that changes throughout each of the different entities, and you can see those numbers being captured within those assumptions. And we also have a revenue per unit that we're generating based upon our facilities that we have here at the top. Now that we have those fixed assumptions that are really driving our revenue numbers, down here at the bottom in our model lines, we're now actually generating what are the occupied units based upon our key assumptions for each of those different facilities. So you can see here our occupied units for and our location 100, our location 200 and 300. And based upon our occupied units, we are calculating out that revenue that we will be getting from our public insurance revenue stream. And so if we take a look at how this is actually being generated, as we edit this line, we can see that we are calculating our occupied units for this certain location by a formula. So if I look into that formula, you can see it is in plain English, there's no real IT coding here, where we're taking that occupancy rate, that room allocation rate that we had in our assumptions, and we're multiplying it by that total number of units available in this entity 100. And so we're using these model lines, and we're also using our assumptions that we had already gathered in our calculation to be able to generate that number of occupied units. And as you can see, just in a general standpoint, we have access to all our different assumptions, our model lines that we can use within our calculations, as well as the calculation features around, if-then statements, just those general type functions that you probably would use today within Excel, you can use right here within the calculation model. So really easy to be able to learn and understand and create models on the fly. And you can see over on the left-hand side where my cursor is, or my pointer is, you can see that word, this is linked. And so this is fantastic because the revenue that we're generating and calculating here within the model, that's being linked right back to that budget line item. So as you are updating and modifying your forecast throughout the year, maybe in fixed assumptions or even in your occupied units down here in this example, that will automatically be linked over to your budget and your forecast number for an updated view. Now let's take it one step further from a scenario standpoint. So now that we have a model like this created and it's feeding our forecast, what we can do is create new scenarios on the fly to test out what would happen if we added an expansion unit or expansion wing within one of our units to have more rooms being offered to our long-term residents. So let's create a new scenario from scratch, and let's say this is expansion scenario. And what this does is it creates a complete copy of our entire working budget, and now we're focused in on that what if scenario for expansion. And you can see that highlighted in blue here. So now we can come in here and make changes to our key fixed assumptions. So if we wanted to, let's say, expand our number of units, instead of 11, since we're expanding to a new wing, this will be now 25. And let's do that same thing for our second location here, and let's expand it from 11 to 30. And even let's take it one step further, because we are improving our facilities, our revenue per unit is now going up to 8,000. So as I'm making these changes and I'm saving this information, this will all flow through our revenue model as well as into our main budget structure. And anything that's being driven off of this revenue number will now be updated. So in our what if scenario. Now let's take a look at what that financial impact is of those various changes. So going over to our sheets area, which is our reports, our automatically consolidated reports, we can now see in our P&L that we're focused in on that brand new what if scenario. So we now have a full refreshed view of our revenues, of our operating expenses by month for that total year. So we can see what that impact is. But what we really wanted to see was, how does that compare to our working budget that we had previously before making those changes? So by choosing expansion versus our working budget, we now see that's our new scenario that we just created versus what we had before those changes were being made. So, and we can see how that impact has made, or what that impact is on our revenues, on our operating expenses, and our bottom line as well. So you can see with that change, the difference for the total year is we'll have an increased profit of just under $1 million with that expansion, as well as those revenue changes within the tool. So really easy to be able to see to create models, to run what if scenarios and see the impact before actually making changes to your business. So back over to our PowerPoint here. And once again, just to hear from some of our customer testimonials here, you can see that, they ran a couple scenarios within hours. We were able to have comparative P&Ls and be able to present them to their executive team. They were able to spend additional quality time with budget owners to provide clarity and context. Not only if it's a time saver, but it also has greater accuracy. And also over there on the right-hand side, Sage Intacct Planning, it's really there to support decisions and build scenarios on top of the budget. So really great feedback from our customers around the modeling capabilities. So next on that continuous planning cycle is really about analyze and the analysis piece of the tool. And we saw some of that when we created our what if scenario. But also, when we think about analysis within our budgeting information, this step goes well beyond just that budget analysis. But of course, planning can capture the annual budget, but really, why stop there? The need is for more frequent forecasting is something that we always hear our customers striving for. But with their current process, it may be too cumbersome. So within Sage Intacct Planning, we make it really easy for you to be able to capture monthly forecasts and be able to see that rolling view of year-to-date actuals plus an updated forecast going forward for that full year updated picture. So we have the ability to easily create milestone versions, whether that's monthly or quarterly forecast, budget versus actual comparison, having a rolling view. There's a lot of different possibilities you can capture within our tool. And you can even see how accurate you are and your team is when they're actually updating forecasts. So you can compare different forecasts side by side to see where improvements can be made in accuracy within forecasts. So all this built-in capability really allows for teams to have more visibility, be more accurate, and focus on the items that needs attention the most. So let's take a quick look at some of those other items that we just saw within Sage Intacct Planning, but I'm going to toggle over to one of our other budgets to show you some more of that enhanced analysis capabilities. So within our dashboarding feature, this is fantastic to be able to take a look at not only that working budget that you have gathered, but also from a forecasting capability. So you have the ability to toggle back and forth to be able to look at, let's say, what your approved budget is for the year. Maybe you can take a look at your August forecast or your October forecast or December forecast. By choosing what you want to see, you have that ability to be able to do that right within our visualizations. And the same from a budget versus actual standpoint. So with our direct integration with Sage Intacct, loading in actuals on a monthly basis is really easy. And you're able to see visually here how that looks side by side with your working budget. So you can see our budget highlights here, what our actuals are year to date, our working budget, and so forth, as well as a lot of different interactive visualizations around, let's say, operating expenses. You're able to see by department what that looks like, actuals versus your working budget. Or if you wanted to look at operating expenses by location, you can easily change that view and you can see that information at a consolidated level as well as by any dimension within the planning tool. And the same goes from a sheet standpoint. So just like what we saw from a visualization standpoint, you're able to look at, let's say, one of our forecasts, our approved budget, or actually, let's take our August forecast. And how does that actually compare to our actuals, or how does that compare to our approved budget? So you can easily see, various versions side by side to be able to get that view as well. And last but not least, as I mentioned previously, being able to have a rolling view of actuals year to date automatically with the most updated working budget going forward. So you have that rolling view of your latest financial statements with actuals year to date and budgets going forward. And of course, you always have that ability to use your dimensionality to slice and dice this information to be able to say, you know, for our single location, how does our P&L look for our East region, for example, or for our central location and so forth. So a lot of capabilities around cash forecasting, P&L, balance sheet, revenue, headcount, and modeling. All right, and back to our PowerPoint here. Some of our customer testimonials around the analysis piece. You know, we increased forecasting frequency by 6 times. They gain new insight and agility to help fuel rapid growth. Lots around time savings in their analytics and strategy, so senior management can make more informed decisions. So just having this information that is connected with Sage Intacct, as well as the ability to have different forecasts within the planning tool, really does allow that full analysis piece for the financial statements. And of course, last but definitely not least is reporting. So this is very similar to what we were seeing previously, but as finance and business teams are building their plans and forecasts, you know, you really have that immediate consolidated view in real time in Sage Intacct Planning. So no more waiting for those Excel sheets to be manually consolidated into a larger Excel file. This process is automatic and it's a huge time saver for a lot of our customers. And also right out of the box are those pre-built reports and dashboards to view the plan and any other forecast or scenario. You know, there's a lot of flexibility in viewing with dimensions and budget structure options to present the data in the way that you want to see it. And also that beautiful part about the connection with Intacct is the ability to push Sage Intacct Planning information back to Sage Intacct. So you can leverage any of the information that you create within Sage Intacct Planning in the reports and dashboards you already have created in Intacct, or also create more robust and customized reports as needed. So it's a fantastic way for that collaboration piece, to share that final budgets with stakeholders, and also just to create reports and dashboards that measure performance on the fly. So I'll quickly show how that integration works and that reporting capabilities work with Intacct and Sage Intacct Planning. So right now I'm logged into my sales demo Intacct environment where I'm looking at dashboards. This dashboard shows our P&L statement here, and we're looking at actuals year to date, and then we have budget going forward for those future months. So as you're navigating through your information in Intacct with our budget information, you have the ability to drill into additional detail right within your dashboards and your reports within Intacct. So for example, if we are looking at our budget number here, $157,000 for our sales revenue for a particular product, if you wanted to see the detail behind that number, clicking into that $157,000, it will automatically pop open a brand new tab in Sage Intacct Planning, and it will open that information in a read-only view. So you can see it's now logged us into Sage Intacct Planning. It's taken us right to that standard products revenue line item. You can see our actuals year to date that we just saw in Intacct, and here's that $157,000 of our forecast. So you now can see, okay, this is where it's actually being sourced from. And if we wanted to see additional detail around that $157,000 and the rest of our forecast going forward, we can actually go right to that model line, just like those models that we saw previously, where now we can see, oh, here's our standard products. It looks like it was being adjusted through a sales adjustment of 20% and 5% for future months. We can even get into the low-level detail around what that item list price is, how it's actually being generated with the number of units that we have forecasted, and where that actual $157,000 is coming from. So it's really nice to be able to have that direct integration, to be able to perform investigation on how is that budget and forecast number actually being generated within the tool, right within just a click of a button. And of course, you may be thinking, how did we actually get that information into Intacct? By using our Connect to Sage Intacct here. And if I click on that, and if I just log in really quickly, this is where you have that ability to either import your actuals from Sage Intacct or export your budget to Sage Intacct. And this is great because you have the ability to capture multiple budgets within Sage Intacct. So you can either add, your updated forecast information to an existing budget, or if you wanted to, let's say, create a new budget within Sage Intacct. So you could actually create that updated information within Intacct and then be able to use that newly created budget right within your dashboards and reports in Intacct, just by changing what budget you're pointing to within the report detail. So it's really fantastic to be able to use those together, not only to create the budget, but also to report on the budget as well. And going back to my slideshow here, once again, from a reporting standpoint, having access to data to make informed decisions without looking at 20 different reports, having increased efficiency within their budgeting and forecasting and reporting processes, being able to give access to department heads on demand budget versus actuals reporting, and so forth. So lots of really great value points that we see our customers taking advantage of with Sage Intacct Planning. And last but not least, I just wanted to hit on some other of those key capabilities within Sage Intacct Planning, because I know we only had a short period of time today, but we have a lot of other built-in capabilities around employee planning, around guided tours and walkthroughs that help users enter data into the system and adjust their budgets and forecasts. Things around advanced modeling and built-in financial intelligence and calculation logic, rolling forecasts, multi-currency planning. If you need to be able to have multi-currency, that's all built into the tool. And so there's a lot of other really great capabilities that are built into Sage Intacct Planning that do support this full continuous planning cycle that we went through today. So just to wrap up on these important steps within the planning cycle, hopefully you saw today how Sage Intacct Planning can be that platform for you to really achieve a significantly better budgeting and planning experience. And with all the advanced features that allow the application to grow with you and the business in a real self-discoverable way. And just to highlight out there, obviously this was a very high level presentation. If this is something that you'd like to explore at a deeper level, Stephen and team and myself are always happy to have a further discussion in a more detailed demo or presentation that is more focused on your industry and your business processes as well. So just wanted to throw that out there.
So I haven't seen any questions come in, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you again all for joining us. Again, if you guys do have questions, please reach out to your assigned account manager, or you can email us at am@acumenfl.com, or you can give us a call at 407-965-2411. We will have this webinar recorded on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Our next set of webinars will start up again in the new year, so be on the lookout for topics, or you can always reach out to us and let us know what you would like to see next. And with that, I believe that's all we have. So thank you, Nicole, for the great presentation, and we hope you all have a great, happy holiday and look forward to seeing you again soon.